Hey Collectors, welcome to Star Wars Collected. I'm Jonathan. Just finished episode 7, the season finale of Book of Boba Fett. Took a ton of notes, gonna run down through all the things that I thought were cool and notable in the episode, and then we'll talk about collectibles at the end. Alright, first of all, that bar is toasted. I had some help, or had some hope at the end of the last episode that, you know, maybe we'd have some survivors from that. I think everybody inside of that who was there is dead and gone. Finnick really wants to sell drugs, which I thought was kind of interesting. I know she's thinking about revenue, and she doesn't seem to be quite, the reformist that our buddy Boba Fett here is. But she's like, man, we should sell drugs to people because, maybe it's killing people, but it brings in a lot of money. So I thought that was kind of interesting. Maybe a little less of a good guy than what we might think. The Mod Vespas convinced Boba to stay in this sort of, toasted bar. It reminds me a little bit of sort of the standoff at the end of The Mandalorian Season 1 when they're stuck in that bar. More Cad Bane. I thought Cad Bane looked amazing in this episode. I liked how he looked in the last episode, but him in this episode, I just feel like the face was moving a lot more, and I don't know if that's CGI, I don't know if that's puppetry, it could be a mixture of both like they seem to be doing anymore, but I thought he looked great, and of course he sounded great. That voice talent that they brought over from the Clone Wars and the Bad Batch, that voice, he's perfect for it. So that was great to see him. Looks like the Mayors and the Pikes are all in together with Cad Bane. We knew that the Mayor was kind of, on the other team at this point, but I think at one point we had heard that he was off planet, which was not the case. So cool to see that character. That character ended up making a whole lot less of an impact, I think, than any of us ever thought. But cool to see it nonetheless. The Pikes admit to killing the Tuskens, and it wasn't the Nikto Raiders. We kind of already assumed that, but we hadn't really been told that. I thought it was funny that Cad Bane made a line as far as 2 stomachs to the Ithorian. Again, something I think that we knew, if not in canon, we knew in Legends. But I just always like these kind of like weird versions of common phrases that we use. Saw the X-Wing come in. I was super excited. My first thought, of course, was Luke. And I thought, well, we've got all kinds of other friends that have X-Wings out there. Appa being one of them. But as soon as I saw the stripes, I knew that was, Red 5's X-Wing. Grogu flying an X-Wing with R2. Peli kind of makes a joke of like, oh, you learned to fly an X-Wing, and then the droid's like, meh, meh, meh. And of course, she knew that it was R2. But we got to see R2 again. Always good to see R2. She says, Grogu, that's a terrible name. I'm not calling you that. That was pretty funny. We get to see that he has chosen the chainmail. Interesting, he has chosen, it would seem, to be a Mandalorian. And then as we see through the episode, he certainly is not giving up his Force powers. Now, a big thing that they've been exploring, especially since, the prequels and things like that, and sort of the other, in the comics and books and things like that, are video games, that there's ways to be Force sensitive and not be a Jedi. So that's interesting to see. Is it as hard of a definitive of an answer as what we think it might be? That will to be seen. He eats worms. Worms are yummy. I like gummy worms myself. He likes them live, out of the earth it seems, but pretty cool. I once again like the Gamorreans better when they have the armor on it. They looked a little weird, a little naked in the first few episodes. They've slowly, as the season been going on, they've been adding armor and helmets and things like that, and I like that better. Just fits my, Return of the Jedi vision of a piggy. We get our first sort of Fett versus Cad Bane duel setup, but Fett keeps us cool. He doesn't let the fact that, he kind of learns that the Pikes killed his Tusken family, let him get into a duel. We all know from the Cad Bane Clone Wars animation bits that Cad Bane wanted to train Boba Fett so that he could, in a way, defeat a Fett. He wanted to defeat Jango Fett, but didn't have that option. So Cad Bane has been wanting to fight and have a duel with a Fett for a very, very long time. And of course, we see that missing animation from the Clone Wars in which Boba and Cad Bane gave each other little marks in the head. So that was kind of, fit his character very well. Offers to avoid the whole fight if he'll just let the spice flow. Kind of, again, very Dune-like. Tells the truth about the Tuscans and the Pikes. And it also seems that the other families have turned on everyone and that they have been in with the Pikes, who knows for how long, maybe before he had that maybe before Boba Fett had that meeting at his palace, maybe it was after, who knows. But it seems like everybody was pretty comfortable with letting the Pikes take over, at least their town or their city, if not all of Tatooine. Kind of interesting. They killed our piggies. They pushed our piggies off the ledge, and that was sad. That was sad for the piggies. Some people needed to die in this episode. I think a lot less people died than what I thought. I thought a lot more people from Freetown would, bite it or something like that, or maybe a few more of the mod squad. But it ended up being our piggies. I didn't really care if they killed any of the Mos Vespas. I'm not gonna be a huge hater on them. They just didn't really do much for me, but I was very concerned for Black Stanton through the entire episode. But my boy BK pulled through at the end. He's looking good, very happy. Fennec Shan saving the day for the mod squad, just further proving she's a badass. So that was good to see. The Mando Creed is kind of talked about, and Boba Fett calls that bantha fodder. And then he says that that's good. That it's good that Din Djarin is willing to stick with him and be his guy next to him. So kind of interesting. Boba Fett obviously has some issues with being a Mandalorian, whether he is a Mandalorian, not a Mandalorian. A lot of people, I'm sure, down in the comments will be telling me he's not a Mandalorian. However, season 2 of Mandalorian, he brings up his armor and shows the sort of list of people who have had it, and there are Mandalorians in that list. So it just depends, and I think this series is exploring that being a Mandalorian isn't necessarily what Death Watch tells you or what the armor tells you. That it can be what Bo-Katan tells you, or her sister, before that, and maybe it's Boba Fett too, and Grogu is going to be a Mandalorian, and he's got Jedi powers, and Jedi, he at least has Force powers and was trained to be a Jedi, and as pointed out, that those two creeds are very different. So kind of interesting to see that all be explored. The Din Djarin is willing to die for honor, and he says this is the way, which was a little unexpected. I don't know why he's always saying that, but a little unexpected at the time. We learned that the Twi'lek aide was educated on Coruscant. I always love a drop of Coruscant or anything from the prequels, just to connect things together. It's called a tailhead by the Pikes. I feel like that's really racist, but that's also very Star Wars. That's what happens a lot in this stuff. It seems like Boba is quite the poet as far as him laying out his terms of what conditions in which he will leave, of course, which are 0 conditions that he will leave, and all conditions of the Pikes need to get out of Tatooine. Finally, some jetpacks. They used their jetpacks. It was good to see that both Din Djarin and Boba Fett were using their jetpacks. Again, I don't really know why they would then land on the low ground. If we've learned anything from Star Wars, is that you want the high ground. He gets to use his knee dart a couple times. It looks a little weird sometimes when he does it, but it kind of just points his knee at people and mows them down. Let's see. The Freetown people show up on a speeder. That speeder looks really familiar. I think maybe we saw that in A New Hope or some other film at some point. Let me know down in the comments if you recognize it. Not mad at all that some of the mod bikes got screwed up. I'm a car lover and a motorcycle lover as well. And I don't like the Mos Vespas. I don't like the colors. I don't like how it looks. I think the characters are fine. They're okay. But I just don't like those rides. So as many of those as when it gets messed up, I think the better. The Pikes come packing with some major robot spider tanks, which feels like the old droidekas. In a lot of ways, they look like the droidekas. They were obviously much larger. They had more legs, but I feel like there was, that little kind of like ribbon type thing, that little joint that was going off their arms reminds me of the back of the droideka. Just the way that they moved, and they had the sort of two-pronged gun on each hand. So I think Peli called him a scorpion droid at one point. I'm not sure if I heard that correctly, and I almost feel like I've heard that term before, but it looked different, so not completely sure if I heard that right, but they look pretty cool. I like them. Let's see. The rocket, of course, doesn't even do anything against them. They have some really, really strong shields on those guys, and the Darksaber also doesn't go through the shields, but always cool to see the Darksaber coming out. I think this episode, Fett actually got to do some things. I wish Fett had done more things through the entire series, but he actually did some things. He shot some people. He had a plan at points, but he actually did stuff. I still wish he had maybe a little bit more confidence at times. It seems like he's kind of easily persuaded, or just that he's wrong a lot, or that he's kind of a little naive. I know he's kind of new to the whole the whole not being a bounty hunter thing, but I would hope that his 40 plus years ahead of him would inform him a little bit more as to the right thing to do when these things arise. We had a little Mando Grogu reunion. A little bit surprised that that happened so fast. If you had asked me at the end of the last season of Mandalorian, I would have said that maybe the reunion with Grogu wouldn't happen until a third to a half of the way through season 3, and maybe even could have been the finale or something like that. Now I think Grogu is so beloved, just ask Mrs. Collected, so beloved that you kind of need him in the Mando season. I think a lot of people would fall off if you had 3 or 4 episodes of season 3 with no Grogu. So I understand why they're back. I love that Mando caught Grogu at one point like a football catch. I loved hearing that roar in the background and knowing that it was the Rancor and seeing the Rancor. Boba's riding him. I wish that had maybe paid off better and more earlier. I think a scene or several of him interacting with the Rancor more, learning to ride the Rancor more, more Danny Trejo, something of that nature. Now, I know we got a kind of learning to ride a beast montage from season 1 of Mandalorian, so I can understand not wanting to retread that, but I'm not sure it paid off like it could have. But still very cool to see that Rancor out there. That was really nice. The Rancor is wearing armor, which ended up being very helpful, but I thought that was kind of cool too. I could see that being something that a tribe would have done. We think of Rancors, and I know that there are some stories with Dathomir and with the sisters that have to do with Rancors and things like that, and I can sort of see that all working together. Darksaber does a great job at slaying the droids. Grogu saves Daddy. I like that Grogu sort of used his Force abilities to kind of pull a crucial part out instead of it just being like Grogu crunches the droid. It was a little bit more thought out, a little bit more specific, which I thought was pretty interesting. And then once that droid's got that little part missing out, the Rancor absolutely slays it. That was really cool. And Boba Fett telling the Rancor to do it, and then he actually destroys it. Really cool. The second droid put up a heck of a lot better fight, I think. A lot of good hits in, scratching the Rancor, coming really, a couple shots and things like that. So I thought that was pretty cool. The Rancor looked really good too. I was really impressed with how it looked, how it moved around. It reminded me enough of the Return of the Jedi one to, even though I know it's probably CGI in this one and obviously not stop motion like the first one was, it was good enough. I liked it. It looked good. I like that the Rancor ate a pike. I mean, the Rancor basically did everything. They ate a pike, threw somebody, crunched somebody, but, we're used to seeing the Rancor eat some people, so at least taking a little snicky snack there. A little bit so much for protecting the city, though, because once you have a wild Rancor in there, he wrecked the place. There was a lot of destruction, so maybe it was a great way to end up saving the day, but Boba Fett kept talking about protecting the city and protecting the people, and man, that Rancor wrecked that city. Okay, so Cad Bane comes back. There is an actual final duel. And he says, he references that he's known him for a long time. I've known you for a long time, Boba. Kind of trying to figure out what's your angle on this, because he's thinking how Cad Bane thinks and how a younger Boba Fett would have thought. And I like that Boba Fett says, I'm not a boy any longer and you're an old man. Unfortunately, Tamar Morrison's a little bit older than what he should be for playing this role, but he looks fantastic. And in this duel, the Mandalorian-ness of him kind of fails him. He loses his EE3. He gets his armor pushed around a little bit. He gets his helmet taken off. His little weapons on his gauntlets don't save him. And what ends up saving him is the gaffy stick that he made when he was with his Tusken family. And I think that is a theme that has kind of gone through all the episodes. I'm not sure if it really paid off quite how quite how they would have liked it to. But it was interesting. I am bummed, and I also completely understand why they killed Cad Bane. I've wanted Cad Bane in live action for so long. I remember when Solo was coming out, there were hopes around that, all these different things. But when you look back at the history of these two characters, they are so interlinked that it is hard to find a better conclusion to Cad Bane's story than having Boba Fett, his apprentice, kill him. So I'm bummed that we only got him for a little bit. He did look fantastic when he was there, and maybe we'll get to see him more in the Bad Batch. But I also understand that if you're going to have an end for that character, it's hard to think of a more fitting end than at the hands of Boba Fett. A little weird that Boba Fett, people start shooting the Rancor and they're trying to like kind of get it under control, but that doesn't really work. There's a King Kong Rancor moment, which I'm a cinephile, so I love seeing that the homage there. The little shipnog came back out to entertain Grogu. Mando tried to ride the Rancor, and the Rancor was not having that. Was about to smash him. Then the Rancor tries to crunch his head. I'm a little bit, just go a little bit further, Rancor. Get down to the neck. That's the soft, chewy part. You don't have to bite the helmet. But Mando gives him some really serious heartburn with a flame right to the mouth. Grogu calms the Rancor, and I like this. Now, there's sort of this history in Star Wars of if there's a wild animal, kill it. Not my favorite, perhaps, way of going about it. And if you remember the Mudhorn, of course, that gave them their signet in season 1. That was sort of a situation where this kind of poor animal was trying to defend their eggs, and Grogu didn't kill that animal, but suspended him up, saved his future daddy, and then Djarin ended up stabbing the thing to death. So it was nice to see that Grogu didn't murder the Rancor, and instead took a much more calm and restrained way of doing it. And I'm wondering if he didn't maybe pick that up from Luke. Not that Luke is necessarily the best Jedi out there, the most balanced Jedi out there, but that's something that at least Luke would be able to tell him to do, and maybe somewhat give him the example of. So I'm kind of hoping that came from his training there. I love that he gives him a little pet on the front there, and then cuddles up next to him. Now I don't know if that's just because Grogu's tired, or we've seen a lot where Grogu uses the Force and he's kind of down for the count after that. He's just so small, so cute. Runs out of energy and needs to take a little nap after that. I love seeing the TK helmets, the Stormtrooper helmets, back on the spikes. That was such an iconic image from the season 1 Mandalorian and the run up to it. So that was always cool to see. We learned that all of the families were helping the Pikes the entire time. Of course, we already assumed that because we saw, the Aqualish turn on them and all the different little burgs in there. But the actual leadership, they were all together in Mos Eisley. And we see Fennec Shand really showing that she is a master assassin, which was nice to see. She hasn't always been a master assassin. She's been a blunt instrument at times. So it was kind of cool to see a scene where there's snipers and snip, 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 and everyone's sort of down for the count and gone. It's Fennec Shand taking down all these people at once. So that was cool. There's respect in the streets again. Boba's walking. People are bowing to him and giving him some sort of chest type thing. And Boba's doing it back, which I think is important too. It's something that Jabba would not have done. If Jabba was in the streets, he would not have lifted his very nasty arm to show respect back to the people. So I think that's a nice character moment for Boba. Shows a little bit of growth and shows that he kind of understands the situation he's in. Kind of like any good manager, that they kind of work for the people below them. So I thought that was great. The Book of Boba Fett theme song sort of had this like Renaissance fair sound to it, which I thought was kind of funny. Of course, Grogu ended up being in the bubble of the Naboo in One Starfighter, just as we all knew that he would. And just like me, he likes to go fast. So I like that little tip, tap, tap. And of course, the downside of that ship is that they can't directly interact. So, if Grogu needs a hug at some point, like they're going to have to land on a planet, and Mando's going to have to give him a hug on the planet. I don't think I could stay that far away from Grogu the whole time. And then we go to credits. And after the credits roll for a little bit, we see the back of the tank and we see Cobb Vanth in there. And it looks like he's about to become a mod because that DJ guy that was the surgeon, he is, ready to go. So Cobb Vanth, he used the armor of Boba Fett before, but he seems kind of like the most anti-mod guy on there. So that will be interesting. For a moment, I was hoping that was Cad Bane in there. And I was surprised earlier in the episode when they were sort of talking about Cobb Vanth as if he was as a goner. They chose their words carefully. But good to know that Timothy Olyphant will be back for future stories because he's a fantastic actor and his hair alone is worth being on the screen. So my final thoughts on this series. It was very disjointed. It was a weird way to tell a story, guys. I went to film school. There are traditional ways of telling a story, and it's okay if you break those. It's completely okay if you break those, but you need to do it for a reason. And this is just a really weird story. There were so many flashbacks in the first few episodes. Then it goes off and tells, the Mandalorian story for 2 episodes, and then it comes back to this, and kind of a mash of the two. The flashbacks that were in the earlier episodes didn't necessarily always relate to what was going on in those episodes in the current day, which is usually how you use a flashback. So a very disjointed series, a very disjointed way of telling a story. It felt more like television to me than The Mandalorian did. Even this last episode with a big payoff, it just felt, the stakes weren't quite right. It just felt a little bit more like television than what I thought The Mandalorian did. As much as I loved episode 5 and 6, I wish it had maybe a little less crossover. I think a 7-episode series about Boba Fett becoming the Godfather or becoming some sort of gangster type film or something of that nature maybe would have been more interesting and save some of the Mando stuff for The Mandalorian. Those ended up being 2 of my favorite episodes, but it's almost like they're interludes more so than being part of Book of Boba Fett. I kind of feel like Book of Boba Fett really was sort of 5 episodes, and then you sort of had these 2 interlude episodes that are 95% about The Mandalorian. That being said, I hope we see a season 2 because I think there is more that can be done with this. I think season 1 is maybe struggling a little bit by having to set up season 3 of The Mandalorian, sort of like Iron Man 2 or something like that. Another Jon Favreau film that maybe did a little bit too much lifting for other things. So I would kind of like to see a Book of Boba Fett season 2. Let's get off world. Let's see. We never saw Bossk. I think everybody kind of thought we were going to see Bossk. Let's see some of maybe the old classic bounty hunters and maybe tell a different story. Let's get off Tatooine. Tatooine, we're always on Tatooine. I don't really mind it that much, but let's tell some other stories with it. Let's talk collectibles, all right? This is a collectible channel. Not a whole lot has changed in my lineup here. Some of the things that I thought we might want early on, I'm not particularly interested in. The mayor, the bar owner, very attractive, obviously, but not something that character is going to not live in infamy for me. So what I definitely would like to see, Hot Toys Cad Bane, Hot Toys BK. I think the Gamorreans make a lot of sense. I don't know if I'd buy the Gamorreans, but I can definitely see people wanting the Gamorreans for their displays as background characters. I'm glad I have Fennec Shand on pre-order. She didn't disappoint me through this. I love badass women, and they didn't change her costume a whole lot or anything like that through this, so I feel confident about that. I think it makes sense to do another Boba Fett. He does look different in this than he does in The Mandalorian. I think Boba Fett's always kind of sell. It's not the biggest departure in armor and things like that, but I could see them doing one and it's selling well. And then today, the Jabba's Court was announced from Hasbro, the vintage collection. So that is cool for those people. Going into the Book of Boba Fett, I had considered buying the the throne that Boba Fett sits on, and having Boba Fett and then putting Fennec Shand next to that. It's definitely a badass image, Boba Fett on that throne. But my concern at the time when I didn't pull the trigger was I wasn't really sure if that was going to be something iconic. And I would say out of this series, it is not iconic. It's not Vader in his rehabilitation chamber, the little teeth and the interlocking, like that's iconic. That's like something that you can see. It's not the Emperor in his chair and the window behind him or something like that. So a very cool piece. Maybe someday I'll 3D print one or something like that, but I don't think I'll be making the investment through Sideshow or Hot Toys or Iron Studios or any of the other ones. So, overall, I'm going to give this series a B. There were some episodes that I did not particularly care for. There were some that I thought were really solid. Overall, though, I just feel like it was a very disjointed story. I feel like they could have chosen a more clear path, and then by being able to focus more on that, tell a better story in that. So that's where we're going to leave it, guys. Let me know down in the comments, what were your final thoughts on both this episode, the series as a whole, and the collectibles that you would like to see come out of this, because I think there's some real possibilities. Some of the stuff we've seen before, but what would you like to see that's new? All right, guys, see ya.